Crystalline Podcast. Crystalline Podcast.
Conversations to inspire.
Hello and welcome to the Crystalline Podcast, inspirational conversations with extraordinary folk. Today we had the pleasure of sitting down with the legend Sally Fallon. Enjoy.
Okay, welcome ladies and gentlemen. Today we are honoured to be joined by Sally Fallon, co-founder of the Weston A Foundation and author of one of my favourite books, Nourishing Traditions. Sally is an expert on nutrient-dense food and a massive influence in my journey. So, without further ado, Sally, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing fine. It's a bit early for a podcast, but I'm doing fine.
Okay, splendid. So I was hoping first, Sally, I would love to know a little bit more about you and your journey up until the point you discovered Weston A. Price's work.
Well, I think I was very fortunate. I came from a family that was really interested in food. I would say that my parents were the first foodies. They traveled a lot. My mother was a wonderful cook, and when they came home, they would cook the things that they'd eaten on their trips. So we had cassoulet and prosciutto and all these wonderful things from a very early age. And like my mother, I loved to cook, and we were very much influenced by Julia Child's book when it came out, Mastering the Art of French Cooking. And I kind of went through the whole book, taught myself to cook. So using lots of eggs, butter, cream, we had some liver pate, that kind of thing. And that's just how I got started in life. And when my children started coming along, that's the way I fed them, and they were very healthy. And it was just about this time, the early 1970s, that we started to hear this low-fat propaganda, and that children should be put on low-fat diets, no whole milk, no butter. Give them cereal, not eggs. And I knew that this was wrong. I just knew in my bones that this was wrong, and I knew that my children would not be happy on such a diet. I knew from my own experience that a high-fat diet kept blood sugar under control and kept your moods under control. So that was just about the time that I discovered Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, the book by Weston Price. And that I confirmed my suspicions that this was the right kind of diet. The high-fat, nutrient-dense, rich diet was the right diet for myself and for growing children.
So how did you come across it?
I found it in a bookstore on Wisconsin Avenue in Washington, D.C. It was called the Yes Bookstore.
So you read this book, and then what's the steps between that and then setting up the Weston A. Price Foundation in '99?
So continuing on, I had 3 more children. Each one got healthier than the last because I started doing the things that Dr. Price recommended. I ate more liver. I used cod liver oil. Couldn't get raw milk very easily, but lots of cheese. And when my youngest turned 5 and he was in school full time, I had more time. And I also got this idea to write a book that would put Dr. Price's findings into a more practical form for people, a more engaging and inviting form. And the idea took hold of me and just would not let go. I became obsessed with this idea. So I'd never written a book before. I didn't really know what I was doing. I had to learn a desktop publishing program, and I just got started. And as I went along, I realized that I needed some help with the science part of it. And I happened to read an article about Mary Enig and her work on trans fats and so forth. And she lived near me, so I called her, and that's how our collaboration started. At first, I paid her for her consulting work for me, but then we were just on the phone all the time. I said, "Look, I can't pay you anymore. Why don't you be a co-author?" That was the best thing I ever did. And Mary, so now we are up into the early 90s. And in 1991, the NIH decreed that the so-called prudent diet would be given to babies and children. And we were extremely alarmed about this and knew this wasn't right. So that's been our number one focus since that time. After the book came out, we decided to set up a foundation that would have a journal and would keep all these issues in front of people and follow the politics, follow the science. So that's the story.
Well, thank you for writing it. It's it changed my life, and I've learned a hell of a lot basically from those first 70 pages before the recipes start.
Yeah,
Was
yes.
like absolute gold. And
And the other thing is that Mary was an expert on coconut oil. And you're living in Thailand, so that's the land of coconut.
The problem is they're surrounded by it, but they still love the cheap seed oils over here for some reason.
Oh, well, yes, these companies are really quite vicious.
So a massive part of it for me was, I think I'm going to butcher it, but the sentence was something like, it wasn't about what these traditional people ate, it was how they ate stuff. Like they knew how to take the toxic elements out and maximize the bioavailability. And that was just
Yes.
like, while everyone's arguing you shouldn't eat this, you shouldn't eat that, it's actually how do you eat
How
stuff?
to eat them. That's exactly right. Yes.
And this element that's so prevalent in the book that I feel is massively unknown to most people is this lacto fermenting process. I was hoping you could sort of walk us through that and explain why it's so important.
Yes. So as I was working on the book, I thought, now I need to be consistent. If we're going to talk about traditional cultures, we need to talk about everything they did regarding food. And I happened to be interviewing on the phone Jacques Delongre, who set up the Celtic Sea Salt Company. And he told me about two books in French on lactofermentation, because I'd never heard of it. And I speak French, so I got these books, and it was a little bit hard to order them. You had to go to a bookstore. Remember, we didn't have Amazon in those days. And I just started working with this. The books recommended using whey as an inoculant. And so my children can tell you of the days when the kitchen counters were covered with all of these strange brews. I started with sauerkraut, of course, but then I did fruit chutneys and all kinds of fermented foods. And the other really key thing was soaking your grains. So I bought a grain mill, and the grains should be freshly ground. And then I started working on soaking them before cooking with them. And the prize recipe in the book is the pancakes, which everybody loves. And I'm very proud of that recipe because that was my own invention. And you soak the freshly ground wheat overnight in yogurt or buttermilk or something like that. And the pancakes first of all, they don't taste like whole grains. They taste like white flour. They're very light and they're very, very digestible. And I've had such wonderful feedback on the grain recipes in the book.
So a massive part of my recovery, because I fell for the vegan, vegetarian propaganda when I was younger. A big part of my recovery to health was raw milk, which seems harder to buy than Class A drugs in England for some reason.
Yes, right.
Why would someone want raw milk when they can just get pasteurized milk from the shop so easily?
Well, what we know is that the milk proteins and the milk enzymes are extremely fragile. They're probably the most fragile proteins in nature. And when you heat them, and especially this rapid heating of ultra pasteurization, which takes them up to 284 degrees, I mean, it's Celsius, it's really hot. These proteins are completely warped and distorted, and your body can't use them. So, number one, it can't use the enzymes in the milk, and you need those enzymes to absorb all the vitamins and minerals in the milk. See, raw milk, you absorb 100%, and you don't have to produce the enzymes yourself. They're right there. Obviously, this is for an infant whose digestive system is immature. But for many of us adults who have a compromised digestive system, raw milk is just the perfect thing because it's soothing to the digestive system, supports digestion, but it also ensures that you absorb 100% of the nutrients from the milk. The other thing is that these proteins, these just the regular proteins, they become very allergenic and people have allergic reactions. One of the things they don't tell you is when they talk about how terribly dangerous raw milk is, they don't tell you that there's 20 to 30 deaths, and this is deaths from anaphylactic shock to pasteurized milk every year. So the dangerous milk is the pasteurized milk. And I just discovered a study out of Sweden where they looked at milk drinking, and there's only pasteurized milk in Sweden. And what they found was people who drank milk didn't live as long, and they had more fragile bones and more fractures. So milk does not do a body good when it's pasteurized.
So, what kind of backlash and nonsense have you had to deal with over the years with the campaign for real milk?
Real milk. Actually, they kind of leave me alone. I think the enemy, the opposition, doesn't want to draw any attention to what we're doing. And when they attack people, you get in the news. No such thing as bad publicity. But we have just worked very quietly in the background, working towards relaxation of the laws in every state, because milk is regulated by the states, not by the federal government. And when we started out, there were 27 states where farmers could provide raw milk in one form or another, either as herd shares or in stores or just selling off the farm or pet milk. And now we're up to 47. So we only have 3 states to go, and we are working on getting it legalized in those 3 states. So we'll have a big party when we get up to 50 states. But raw milk is so much more available today than it was when we started 25 years ago. It's everywhere. Lots of people drink it. A lot of influencers talking about raw milk. And so even though the FDA continues to have these pious warnings against it, the consumption of raw milk has really increased.
That's wonderful. When I first discovered it, I went through the phase. I drank a liter every day, and get the colostrum anytime I could. But from speaking in England, it's a little bit different. So it's like, from my understanding, speaking to some of these farms, they were allowed to do it, but they had to test for tuberculosis or something twice a day.
I don't know what the law is in England. So I have a farm here. We produce raw milk that has a label. It says for pets, for dogs and cats. But we do have to. The state comes once a year and takes a sample and tests for pathogens. That's all.
And I'm sort of under the understanding that if the cow is fed grass only, then it's not good. The pathogens aren't going to exist. Whereas if it's fed like GMO
I
corn
wouldn't say they're not
like
going to exist, but it's much more likely to be very clean. Very clean milk. Just having the cows outside, for one thing, and not in a barn all day long. You can imagine what that's like. But also they're eating the food that they're designed to eat, which is green grass.
Yeah, I mean, I know how I feel when I don't have sunlight, so I can only imagine what a cow feels like. So Weston A. Price kind of coined this term X factor, right? which
Yes.
we believe
Yeah.
now to be K2. Is that correct?
Right. So he he had a way of testing using iodine. I don't understand it very well, but he kept finding this other vitamin, and it was really high in grass-fed butter. It wasn't so much in cod liver oil, but it was in butter, egg yolks. He didn't test poultry fats, but it turns out to be very high in poultry fat and poultry liver.
Mm.
Yes, so he didn't know what it was, but he called it the X factor. And he found that the vitamins A and D worked so much better if he had the X factor with it. That's why he gave this high vitamin butter oil along with the cod liver oil.
Mm.
So we came across an article on vitamin K2, and actually somebody sent it to us. And she said little note. She said, "Well, you need to look into this. I think this is Dr. Price's X factor." And I gave it to Chris Masterjohn, who was writing for us at the time, very brilliant mind in nutrition. And about 3 weeks later, he emailed me back and said, "This is it. We found it." And he wrote a big article on it. So that's been really helpful in promoting his work. We know that A and D um, send signals and to activate certain proteins, and vitamin K is what does that, activates the proteins. Yeah, the role of vitamin K is to regulate calcium and phosphorus. I mean, one of many roles, let's put it like that, to make sure they go to the bones and the teeth and not to the soft tissues. So when you have plenty of vitamin K, you're not going to get calcification in your arteries. You're going to get strong bones and strong teeth. And vitamin K in the saliva is what prevents cavities. It's not brushing your teeth. It's what's in your
Ah.
saliva. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. The sort of media would be like, "Oh, you need to drink pasteurized milk to get strong bones," but they kind of
Yeah.
ignore
And
the
the
fact
studies
that.
show that's not the case. You have more fractures if you're drinking pasteurized milk.
Well, okay, moving on to another big one. I feel people are starting online to get their heads around, and people I speak to are becoming more aware of it with the sort of rise in the knowledge of the dangers of these industrialized seed oils, if you can call them that. I feel like my parents' generation and before that, you kind of touched on it, got sold the whole fat is bad thing, and I reckon if it wasn't actually, if fat, as in being fat, was a different word to the food being called fat, it would
Fat.
probably it wouldn't have worked as well. But why is fat so important and not as dangerous as these companies would like us to believe?
Well, you're right. This phrase industrial seed oils, which has a very negative connotation, as it should. I mean, they're a real poison, has just come into the public consciousness. And this is something we've been saying for 25 years. So it's kind of a vindication. But let's start with the animal fats. Dr. Price found that the consumption of animal fats was very important to traditional cultures. And that's where these fat soluble vitamins are, A, D, and K. They're in the animal fats. So, for example, they never ate lean meat. Lean meat actually depletes vitamin A, and if they could only get rabbits at a certain season, they actually wouldn't eat the rabbits because they'd rather starve than eat lean meat because they would live longer.
Hmm.
So they wanted the fat, and they always hunted animals when they were the fattest, and always ate meat with the fat, and valued for example, the butter fat and so forth for having healthy babies. So our emphasis is on eating animal fats. And of course, this is exactly what we're told not to do. And this is propaganda from the vegetable oil industry. It's been going on for over 100 years, and we've written about this. And to demonize what was their competition? Their competition was butter and lard. And so to demonize these two foods, they picked two things that were in these foods that are not in the seed oils: saturated fat and cholesterol. And there's absolutely no evidence that saturated fat's bad for us, and no evidence that cholesterol is bad for us. Well, these are very important factors in the body and in our food. So anyway, at the same time, they were using these seed oils more and more, and they were getting medical people to tell us that we should use seed oils and not animal fats. We should use margarine, cook in uh, shortening, and use spreads and vegetable oils. And the irony of this is that we now know that these oils predispose to weight gain, whereas the animal fats do not. The animal fats support thyroid function, so they support a good, healthy metabolism. And they're also very satisfying, so you don't overeat them. Whereas the vegetable oils are, they really are a poison. They don't nourish you. Your body can't do much with them. It puts them either in triglycerides or in fat, and you don't get much energy from them. It's a real bad bargain. It's a devil's bargain.
Yeah, I think when I first discovered it, I was like, I'm going to do 30 days without consuming it. And I shortly realized this many years ago before I worked out some tricks, but it became near impossible to eat out of the house, essentially. And
Yeah,
now it's always handy to carry some coconut oil or some tallow with you
or
for
butter. Yeah, yeah.
take it with you and ask them to cook in it, which I mean, you can't often get them to clean the pans that have been saturated in it,
Mhm.
but at least my meal's got a little bit more in it.
Well, if you eat plenty of saturated fat, actually, you're protected quite a bit from the seed oils. That's one of the things that Mary Hennig said. So you don't need to be obsessive. I always ask for butter in restaurants. Sometimes I will take my salad dressing, ask them to use my salad dressing.
Yeah, it happened to me not so long ago. It was a couple of weeks ago. I was like, oh, it said it had some butter, and I was like, oh, I'll have that. And I took a bit of it, and I was like, that's not butter. Like, dude, what are you trying to do
Oh,
to me? But obviously, I wasn't going to get into a conversation in another language where I only know like three words.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. Well, what it forces you to, at least at home, to prepare your own food. Because if you buy the TV dinners or pre-prepared food or carry out or whatever, you're going to get the seed oils.
yeah, for sure. So the foundation's been going, what, 25 years now? What have you seen? How's the foundation evolved over those 25 years?
Well, we've been very consistent. I want to say we've published 4 journals a year. Our membership is nice and stable. Our finances are stable. We've done the campaign for real milk, which I think has been very successful. And I think most importantly is that we have seen the birth of so many beautiful, healthy babies by parents who had the wisdom to follow this diet and to prepare for pregnancy with these nutrient dense foods.
When did you come across Pottinger's work then?
Well, Pottinger is archived by the Price Pottinger Nutrition Foundation. And very early on, I read his work. Pottinger was the one who talked about broth,
Hmm.
making bone broth, and he said the most important gift for a new bride is the broth pot, the cooking pot to make broth. Which is kind of interesting because he was also promoting raw food, raw liver, raw milk, raw butter, raw cream, even raw eggs. But he really promoted the broth, which is kind of the quintessential cooked food. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it is interesting that I met a gentleman maybe about 3 or 4 years ago who had many cavities, and he did a 30-day bone broth fast where he only consumed various bone broths, and
yeah.
his cavities healed from that, which I thought was fascinating.
Well, that's very interesting because there's actually not a lot of calcium in bone broth. I wrote a book called Nourishing Broth, and when we sent it out to be tested, we were kind of shocked that there was a little, but it wasn't like milk. And
Hmm.
but that's very interesting that his cavities healed. It's wonderful. He should write us a letter.
I will. Next time I'm back home, I'll get him to do that. One thing I often hear in regards to Pottinger's findings, sort of a common criticism is his research valid and relevant to humans? I mean,
Yeah,
I personally see it every day now. I can't unsee the crowded teeth. I mean,
yeah.
I'm a typical English person. I've got crowded teeth. I see the shrunken jawlines. I see the effect on nasal passages everywhere. But it seems to be one thing people always sort of criticize. How's that applied to us if you'd only tested the cats?
Yeah, so the cats started to degenerate when they got any cooked food, but he was giving them raw meat, raw milk, and cod liver oil, and those were the cats that didn't degenerate and reproduced and so forth. And when he gave them a diet that was not appropriate for cats, and that's not the same diet that's not appropriate for humans. So, but what he saw was in the first generation, you had what I would call the adrenal problems, rashes, vermin, um, allergies, that kind of stuff. And then the second generation, the what we would call chronic disease, cancer, tumors, that kind of thing. And then the third generation didn't breed.
Hmm.
So the females became more masculine, the males became more feminine. Sound familiar?
I mean, it seems very
And they
apparent.
didn't breed.
Hmm.
So you could argue, well, this diet for cats is not the diet for human. I understand all that, but we're seeing exactly the same effects that Pottinger saw. And we're on our third generation now of processed foods, third generation of a diet that is not appropriate for humans, that doesn't feed, nourish, and support human life. And what are we seeing? We're seeing the adrenal problems, we're seeing the chronic problems, and we're seeing the infertility.
Hmm. Pottinger's humans, a lot of people are calling it now.
Yeah, well, that's a very good. I like that. Yeah, Pottinger's humans, but and
Sorry, go on.
well, I was just saying it's reverse. It could well it depends on how far along you've gotten. If you've gotten to the stage of complete infertility, we have had couples become pregnant who thought they were irrevocably infertile on our diet. So there's always hope. But we need to be teaching our young people how to have healthy babies and what kind of diet to have healthy babies. And if you're believing the government, you're not going to have a healthy baby, and you'll probably maybe not be able to have a baby at all.
Yeah, it seems like out of all the noise with sort of fad diets and this and that, it seems like I almost don't even want to call it a diet because it's like it's the only one that supports real food
Life,
and it's
yeah, yeah.
removing food-like substances.
But not removing, we get diets that say, well, no nightshades, no dairy, no grains. And that's not our philosophy. Our philosophy is how can we include all these delicious foods? It's not a diet of deprivation. It's a diet that's very inclusive. We have healthy soft drinks like kombucha. We have
Hmm.
healthy desserts, made with butter and eggs and natural sweeteners. We have healthy salt, unrefined salt, healthy pickles. So it's not that you're excluding certain foods, troublesome foods. It's that you're learning to prepare them properly so they're not troublesome.
Yeah, my partner and I are particularly fond of the pineapple salsa.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, I have some in my refrigerator right now.
uh, I was trying to work out the other day. I was like, do you reckon there's like a scale on if the Pottinger's humans is a thing, let's say. I was trying to ascertain what generation I'm on, like based on
Yeah,
the sort of
well,
physical deformities. Like I
yeah, you're probably on a first generation, I would say, just looking at you. I'm a first generation. My parents both had naturally straight teeth and perfect eyesight. And they grew up on raw milk and cod liver oil and liver and all these good things. And my dad used to sit at the table and say, I don't understand how come your mother and I have perfect teeth and perfect eyesight and all you kids need braces and glasses. So he's asking the right questions. Now, I did the right diet for my children. None of them needed braces. They all need glasses, but a much milder prescription than mine. So I didn't quite get it perfect. Okay. Now I have grandsons coming along, and they seem to have straight teeth and not need glasses. So we'll see. But it takes a generation or two to completely turn things around.
Yeah, because I was thinking this is a couple of thoughts is obviously so when he took the cats and he converted them back over the three generations or
Mhm.
I think it was. I was thinking like, is it possible based on what we know now? Because obviously we've got the food on lock, but there's all these other like crazy things people in the health game are discovering that are like good for us. And I'm thinking he got the food right to repair the cats, but he didn't feed it all the other stuff that we're aware of and all the other techniques. So I'm thinking if you fully gave someone all the things, would the next generation be fixed? That's kind of my thinking. I would like to put it to the test, but I don't know how.
Yeah, we've seen this happen. We've seen parents with narrow jaws have children with wide faces. So we've had great testimonials on this. You talk about fads and all these things. One of the fads that we are very concerned about
Hmm.
is taking vitamin D by itself. Everybody's on the vitamin D bandwagon, but these vitamins work together, A, D, and K. And when you take a lot of vitamin D, your body takes the vitamin K from the liver that it needs to balance the vitamin D. And then if you take vitamin D plus vitamin K, which is now the big fad, um, you're going to really get in trouble with vitamin A depletion. So we've warned against this. And just this very morning, I read there was this big study called the Vital study about vitamin D, and they found that taking vitamin D accomplished nothing. Didn't lengthen your life, didn't re- reduce heart attacks or cancer or anything. So we really need to get our nutrients from food. And when we eat the foods in the right way, so milk, of course, should be raw or fermented, but our grains should be soaked, and our uh, foods like eggplant, for example, need to be salted, get the bitter juices out. When we prepare things properly, everything we eat is going to give us good nutrition.
Yeah, because something people always say to me, I hear this a lot when I get on my spiel about food and
Soapbox.
yeah, start doing that. People say, "Oh, but my grandparents didn't do any of this, and they are absolutely fine. They lived to
Yeah.
98," and I'm like, well, what's the difference then?
Well, the difference, they started off on real food. If they were born before the Second World War, they almost certainly got cod liver oil. All children did. They were eating butter. They ate liver once a week because the doctors told them to. I have an old 1940s newspaper article. Doctors say to eat liver once a week. So they started out on a good diet. They built their house, their body, in a very strong way. And those well built houses can take a lot of abuse.
Hmm.
They may be eating junk food in the end, but they started out with a good house. If you
Hmm.
start out with a shack, you're not going to do so well.
No, it's very, very well said. So you guys have got, I think you've got over 600 chapters worldwide.
It's over 400. It's
400.
coming on 500.
Okay. So what
We have
would you
about 400
say?
in the state.
What would you say the most common misconceptions about the traditional diets do you hear most often from people when you're sort of over
I
the
think the
time?
most common misconception is that they were a very high meat diets. They were very high in protein, and they weren't. They had protein for sure, but they were high in fats. And in certain parts of the world, they had quite a bit of carbs too. These were not um, high protein diets like the paleo diet or keto or all these trendy diets. And you can get in trouble with these diets because eating protein uses up vitamin A, just like taking vitamin D uses up vitamin A. And you definitely can get in trouble.
What would you say? Do you reckon there's any sort of geographic heritage, race, genetics play in it? Because obviously, I've
I think there is. And I think people have to figure that out for themselves. I have Swiss ancestry,
Hmm.
so I probably don't need a lot of seafood, but I do very, very well on raw milk and cheese. I'm a kind of dairy queen. I do well on those foods. Someone who is, for example, Scandinavian ancestry, they had more seafood in their diet, and they probably need more. So yes, I think you do need to work that out. Of course, most of us are mixed. I'm not just Swiss, but so there's always some tweaking. Let's put it like that.
Hmm.
Um, and you'll just have to go by what makes you feel good.
So, in the time you've been advocating for real food, what are the most surprising success stories you've encountered?
Oh, well, it's mostly about the babies. It's
Hmm.
mostly women who've tried and tried to get pregnant, and then they go on our diet and they get pregnant, and they have healthy babies, even at a fairly advanced age. To me, that's the most gratifying thing about the work we do. Of course, we get lots of letters about success stories in adults, dealing with um, problems. I tell you, we've gotten two letters like this: women who were diagnosed with osteoporosis by the Nexus scan, and both we have both these letters in our journal. They started to drink raw milk, and they went back 2 years later, and there was no osteoporosis, no evidence of osteoporosis at all. And in both cases, the doctors were just flabbergasted. They said, "We've never seen this before, that somebody could be cured of osteoporosis. Usually it just gets worse and worse." But when they told them what they'd done, they weren't very interested to hear that.
Hmm. What's your thoughts on organic and commercial food then?
Well, the organic standards aren't perfect, but they're better than nothing. And at least if it's organic, it's not sprayed with glyphosate and some of the atrazine and some of the really terrible pesticides. And where I think organic is extremely important is in grains, because since 2005, that was the year that the Department of Agriculture allowed them to use Roundup to spray the wheat and the oats and the lentils and so forth just before harvest to desiccate them.
Hmm.
Because what they normally did was put them in a warehouse with natural gas and dried them. Okay. So this is going to be a cheap way to desiccate. And this is when we really started to see the problems with gluten intolerance. It's not gluten intolerance, it's Roundup intolerance.
Hmm.
So I think, and we see, and I'm not trying to be critical here, but you see in vegetarians who are eating a lot of lentils, you see real glyphosate toxicity. So with your bread and your rice and your grains and your oatmeal and so forth, you really want to make sure that's organic. Not perfect, the organic standards, but at least you won't have the glyphosate, or not very much of it. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. What do you see? I'm sort of touching on vegetarians there. What do you see as the most under-recognized risks of soy in these modern diets, especially for like infants and I don't know,
Yeah, yeah.
hormone-sensitive people?
Yeah, well, soy is very high in a plant type of estrogen, and it does have an effect. Infant on soy formula has 13,000 to 22,000 times more estrogen in the bloodstream than an infant on dairy formula. And this is especially, well, what we see in little girls is they mature very early. They get breasts, sometimes by the age of 3. It's a terrible thing. They never have a childhood, really. And for little boys, see, the little boys, baby boys up to the age of 6 months, have testosterone levels the same as an adult male. And this programs the boys to express male characteristics at puberty. But if they're on soy formula, that doesn't happen. That the testosterone programming is dampened. So at puberty, you don't know what's going to happen, but it's probably not good. And the other thing about soy is it's extremely hard to digest. It's full of oxalates. I mean, we had for a while they were giving 100% soy diets to prisoners in a couple of states. They've stopped that actually. They think they saw that they were had too much liability. But what we saw was horrible digestive problems, constipation, diarrhea, a lot of kidney stones, a lot of stones everywhere in the body. One prisoner had a stalactite in his stomach. And they grew breasts. They called them bitch tits. And the other thing they called it was chemical castration.
Yeah.
Now, and of course, the people running the prisons think this is good. We dampen their sex drives. We don't have these raging hormones anymore. But and the other thing was soy depresses thyroid function big time. And so many of these men, when they got out, they couldn't work. Couldn't. They had to be on disability.
So do you think, because like the Japanese, for example, they consumed a lot, but would I be right in
No,
saying that the
I have to stop you
fermentation
there.
process? Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't consume a lot.
Hmm.
The average consumption of soy in the traditional diet, not today because their soy is being pushed on them, but in the old times was no more than a tablespoon a day. And it was usually in the form of tofu that was in a nourishing fish broth. And the fish broth counteracted the thyroid depressing qualities of the tofu. And fermentation does make soy more digestible, but it doesn't get rid of the estrogens. They're still there.
Interesting, interesting. So for someone discovering this way of eating, many people listening might have never come across this. What sort of are the most common hurdles when starting out to implement these dietary changes?
I think it's to kind of get over your guilt and your fear of the animal fats. I've had people tell me they felt guilty for eating butter. And of course, has been inculcated this idea that butter is kind of an indulgence and you don't deserve it, that kind of thing. The other thing we tell people is when they do let themselves get on butter and coconut oil and cooking lard and all these things, you may find that you just devour these fats. You go through a period when you can't get enough of them, and that's okay. Your body, you can't get enough of them. Your body is trying to replenish. And after a few months, that sort of settles down. And what you find when you allow yourself to eat these good fats is you're not as hungry all the time,
Hmm.
and you actually tend to lose weight.
So for someone that's heard of it then, but they're reluctant to change from their convenience of the normal way of eating, what would you say to them to try and convince them to do this? Would you show them the evidence, or would you go a different
Yeah, and
route?
I'd say give it a try. We've written a lot of articles on butter and all the wonderful things in butter. Let me tell you a story. A friend of mine is a nutritionist, and she had a woman come in who was suicidal.
Hmm.
No particular reason for being suicidal. She had two children, a nice husband, a house, nice life, but she could barely cope with these suicidal thoughts. And my friend said, and she used margarine and spreads and cooked in vegetable oil because
Mm.
that was the right thing to do, right? So my friend said, well, let's just try one thing. We're only going to make one change. Use butter and cook in butter, and don't use any of these oils. And she came back and see me in a month. Okay, she comes back in a month, not suicidal. All the thoughts of suicide have gone away. She can function. She can cope. Um, Nothing else has changed. Same children, same husband, same house. But she's not suicidal anymore. That was happened with just that one change, switching to butter and away from the seed oil. So this would always be the suggestion I have to make first. And the question is, what's the explanation for this? Well, there is in animal fats, you can't get this anywhere else, is something called arachidonic acid. It's a type of fat. It's small quantities, but your body uses it to make endocannabinoids, your own, in,
Ah, I had no idea
uh,
about that.
yeah, your own marijuana. And you have receptors for this marijuana, and in your body, it doesn't cause you to be addicted or act high or anything, except it makes you feel good, motivates you, and relaxes you at the
Hmm.
same time. And you can
Interesting.
only get this arachidonic acid in animal fats.
Would does the cooking process, so the pasteurization, for example, in butter, would that remove it, or is it still?
Well, I think in the food, it's somewhat protected, and certainly the story I just told you, it was
Hmm.
pasteurized butter,
Hmm.
and they're not ultra pasteurizing butter. So the milk they use in butter and cheese, they can't make cheese if it's ultra pasteurized. It just won't work.
Have you ever come across the works of Jonas von der Planets?
Oh yes, yes, I have. I've written about him. Well,
Because
first of all, he's
go on,
totally
sorry.
against salt. He's,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get. I don't know if I agree with him on several things personally, but other things turned out to be very good for me.
his diet.
Yeah, I did. I did.
Oh,
I basically, I kind of was a bit of an extremist. I went from being a vegan and having
uh-huh.
like the most horrendous. I basically got something called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial
Yes, yes,
overgrowth, which I think was due
yes.
to the amount of fiber pushing bacteria into my small intestines. That's my theory. Anyway, it was during lockdown, and I came across Thomas Cowan first, and he was there talking about COVID and viruses and vaccines, and I was just like, yes, yes, yes. And then all of a sudden, he goes, "It is impossible to be healthy on a plant-based diet," and I was like, "I'm offended." And I shut the computer. I was like, "I don't like this guy anymore," even though I've just agreed with him for like 2 hours. And then,
Yeah.
and then I sat and thought about that for a while, and then I was doing this process to basically kill off the SIBO with like allicin and some other herbal things. And as I was getting better, towards the end of that, I started having intense, vivid dreams every night about eating liver. And it was something I never consumed as a meat eater before I did the plant thing. And
Yeah.
so I started eating liver and I felt a million times better. But then I went full opposite from being vegan. I went raw carnivore because someone tipped
Yeah.
me off to Jonas, and I was eating half a kilo of raw beef mince a day, 16 raw eggs, a litre of raw milk, as much butter as I could physically put in everything. And I just went from being undernourished with like a bobblehead at 56 kilos to 75 in not very
Kilos.
long.
Yeah.
Kilos, yeah, my pound conversion is not very good. I do
Yeah.
apologize.
And I think he recommends eating a lot of celery juice to get chlorine and sodium.
Yeah, the celery
Yeah.
juice. I wasn't doing it fully strict like that, but I
Yeah.
have dabbled in the celery juice, and it is all right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say on that is that one of the purposes of eating is to have a pleasurable experience with foods that taste good. And uh, you couldn't get me to eat a raw egg. It's just the thought that makes me want to throw up just thinking about it. And no salt. I mean, all traditional cultures had salt. Um, I I wrote I wrote a blog about that. What did I call it? Anyway, about Agenus and the salt
Yeah, I
thing.
think he kind of had some ideas right, but yeah, again, at that time I took what worked and then what I didn't agree. Like one
Yeah,
of the things I
and
come across, he was like, you don't need to chew meat. You just need to swallow it. I was like, I'm not a baby
well,
pigeon, mate.
you know,
Like,
if you are a tiger, they just swallow their meat, but they have a lot more hydrochloric acid in their stomachs than we do.
hmm,
So we're not cats. We're not dogs. Dogs just gulp their meat down. Uh,
hmm,
I certainly think it was a better diet than what you were eating, and it probably gave you a lot of nutrients that you were missing.
mm-hmm,
But it's not a good relationship to have with food. One
no,
thing Agenus did was really give a boost to raw milk.
mm-hmm.
I credit him with that. So
Yeah, he was pretty pivotal in that.
Yeah, but Dr. Price talks about this. The meat, the liver, was eaten both raw and cooked. So they did eat raw meat. We encourage people to eat, steak tartare and those kind of things.
Hmm.
Um, but you want to make it appetizing, right? So you add your spices or mustard or whatever. But they also ate it cooked. And what happens when you cook meat, it gently unfolds the meat proteins, and your own enzymes can hook onto them better, and it makes it actually the meat more digestible. And I think you could end up with a protein deficiency on agenesis diet. I know that sounds strange, but um, if you do it for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember quite how long it was. It might have been about 6 months, but then after that, I was like, right, I've completed this, and then
Yeah, I've done this thing.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a bit of a like, I need to know if it works or not kind of guy.
He had some derogatory things to say about me because I ate cooked meat. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't know that. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That was a
personally,
long time ago. I mean, it's interesting that you just came across this diet a few years ago, because I
yeah,
I associate Agenus with about 15 years ago.
yeah. I
I
mean,
will say this: he
mhm.
looked anemic to me.
Yeah, he didn't look great in the end, I have to say.
No, he looked anemic, and he was hyper. Just a really intense person.
I mean, let's just, I mean, his story of how he got better, if that's true, was what
Mhm.
piqued my interest. But like,
Of
you know,
course, of course. Yeah.
but I mean, personally, I will say his steak tartare recipe in We Want to Live, is that what it's called?
Mhm.
That steak tartare recipe is amazing. I have to give him credit there.
Oh, and what's in it? What's in it?
It's it's basically mince, raw egg, homemade mustard from mustard seeds and vinegar, honey,
Mhm.
salt, pepper. Oh no, there's no salt. I put salt in it. Pepper and
Onion.
onion, raw onion. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I personally find eating raw organ meats from time to time just like what you want from like a Red Bull or something that's pitched to you as doing. What would you
Yeah.
say to people that have never tried raw meat? Or what would you say, like the any tips, benefits, that kind of thing?
Well, I would start with something like steak tartare, and I have a whole chapter on raw meat in my book, including, I think there's one like Vietnamese style steak tartare. So every culture had raw meat recipes, and I think it's important to eat raw meat. Let me put it like this: raw animal protein. So if some people really can't bring themselves to eat raw meat. I understand that because
Hmm.
I'm kind of queasy about some foods too. But if you're doing raw cheese or raw milk, those are raw animal foods also. What you get from raw animal foods is B6, vitamin B6, big time, and very usable B6.
And that's all gone in the cooking process, I presume.
Yes, B6 is very fragile, and also riboflavin, that can go too. Uh, and riboflavin, I've recently learned, is very important for your joints, your tendons. You know,
Are
yeah.
you? Would you say it's wise if because like sushi's massive now, and obviously there's a lot of farm salmon which we know is garbage. But when eating raw fish, would you say the citrus way of soaking it in lime or lemon is
I
a
think that's
wise
good.
idea?
Yeah, and that I do love. What do they call it in Spanish? Um, can't think of it right now, but the marinated fish and shrimp,
Oh,
delicious.
ceviche.
Ceviche, yes, right. Yeah.
Would what would be if I was to put you on the spot here?
Okay.
What would you say your top three most nutrient dense foods are?
Okay. So there are two things that I make sure I eat every week. One is a chicken liver pate. That's the way I
Hmm.
like liver. And if I'm really treating myself, I'll have foie gras, which just is the most wonderful food on the planet. And the other thing I try to eat every week is fish eggs. And I can get 2 ounces, little jar of what's called whitefish caviar. It's cheap caviar, basically, for $10. And to me, that's a wonderful investment. Now, I eat it on sourdough bread with butter and sour cream and chopped onions, and not just the fish eggs. And I feel so good after I've eaten those fish eggs. I'm going to have fish eggs today, in fact. But I try to have liver and fish eggs at least once a week. And then the rest of my diet is sort of like meat, veg, and starch, on a plate. It just looks like a normal diet, except I use lots of butter and I drink raw milk, eat lots of eggs, love cheese. Those are all foods that are not weird foods that we can all embrace. I eat rice, I eat oatmeal, soaked oatmeal, um, occasionally a dessert made with maple sugar and butter or something like that.
Well,
So
it's
and kombucha. I make my own kombucha, and that's my beverage. And then fermented foods. So I don't have time to make bread. I get a good sourdough bread from somebody, but I still, after all these years, I make kombucha and I make sauerkraut.
well, it's definitely working, Sally, because you look a hell of a lot better than a lot of vegetarians I come across my age.
Well, I'm. It just shocks me to even think about it. In 3 years, I'll be 80 years old.
Blimey, really?
Yeah, yeah. I've got to stop. I've got to, my big challenge, I have to say, is how am I going to extract myself and find people to carry on? Because even if I live to 100, it's not forever. And I may be getting too old to do all these things. I hate to talk that way, but I was kind of shocked to realize how close I am to 80. Oh my goodness.
Well, you look fantastic for her, I have to say. What I was going to ask, so you sort of touched on it there, but what do you see the future of the movement? And yeah, like, have you got any ideas of who you might sort of appoint? Or
Well, there's two things. One is running the office, and my wonderful office manager, Kathy, we've been like twins this whole movement, and she's in her 60s, so we are definitely looking for her replacement, someone to bring in and have them work up, but we haven't found that person yet. Well, I do have one person in mind, but she has 3 little children, and it's not the time for her. And then for myself, I'm really looking for young people. We're bringing some young people on the board. And I've been told by psychics that the foundation will carry on, will continue. I think we've built a very strong foundation and we've kept to our mission statement. I think that's important. You sometimes get what's called the porcupine effect, where people go off of their mission statement. And our mission statement is nutrient dense foods, especially for pregnant women and growing children.
have you met Thomas Cowan?
Oh, Tom and I we wrote 2 books together.
What was it like working with him? Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
well, Tom
curious.
is great to work with. Just to tell you what they are, we wrote the Nourishing Traditions book of baby and child care together, and we wrote the Contagion Myth together.
Oh my goodness, I forgot you were on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was mind blowing. That I read that.
Mhm.
That's the only book of his I read. I forgot you were on that.
Yeah.
The
Well, Tom is really easy to work with. In that book, we established. I said, "Look, Tom, what I would like is to be the first person to edit what you do, and then if you want other people to edit it, that's fine." Tom's work is brilliant, but it always needs editing. So he agreed, and that we followed those rules, and it was fine. Yeah.
because there was a part in that which was an absolute mind blowing bit for me during that whole because I was like a bit of a conspiracy theorist, you could say, for quite a long time. But I feel like before COVID, I'd kind of felt like I had a good understanding of the land, and I'd like hung up my
Yeah.
coat for a little bit, and then, oh my goodness, get that tinfoil suit of armor out. We got to go and
Yeah.
work out some stuff. And there was a bit in there, and it was like the experiment, I think, from the guy credited with discovering AIDS, whatever that is, but where he had the two beakers of water with
Oh,
the
yes, yes.
so he
And they
puts the
communicated with each other. Yes.
yeah, so you've got one which has got a DNA sequence, and the other one's got nucleotides, and then they shine a UV light on it, and then across the room, it
Yeah.
assimilates to the exact same
Same,
sequence. I mean,
same.
I was just like, how no one sneezed on it. Like, how do you explain that? That is,
Yes, and we really don't understand what DNA is, what it does, how it functions, what its purpose is, and I think that was the whole point of that. And DNA does not determine who we are or what diseases we have or anything like that. So, and the whole point was, how did this disease spread? And it's not these things called viruses because they've never found a virus. But what they have found is that our cells communicate with each other.
well, yeah, kind of wasn't. I don't know. If, I wasn't sure I was going to ask you this, but now I've remembered you reminded me that you were on that. I was like, obviously, this is a relevant question. If you don't want to answer it, I understand. But on a real one, do you think all this stuff with the food is just money driven, or do you think there's a nefarious idea and the money's kind of like also good for them?
Yeah, I think the latter. I think there's tremendous money in processed food, tremendous money, and then in the effects of processed food, in the illnesses and so forth. But I think there is a nefarious conspiracy kind of thing. I think there's really two types of people in the world, and one group hates the other group and wants to get rid of them, and it's very easy to do it by making them infertile. Nobody suspects. You don't have to shoot them or anything. You just make them infertile.
Yeah, a lot of people my age that I'm 32. And there's a lot of people I come across that struggle even getting IVF to work, and I'm just like, this is madness.
Yeah, and we always say if you're going for IVF, do our diet first. Do our diet for 6 months, and you
See,
might be surprised. And maybe if you don't get pregnant the normal way, at least the IVF would work because now your body can carry a pregnancy. But I know it's I have 4 children. They give me such great joy, and to not have that in your life, especially as you're approaching old age and not have children to carry on and to be with you, and it's a terrible thing.
do any of your sorry if this is a personal question, but any of your children or grandchildren are they not interested in carrying on the?
Well, the first thing is I have 5 grandsons, no granddaughters. And I keep hoping for a granddaughter who might carry on. I see this as kind of a woman's work, but I haven't had that yet. um, but what does gratify me is that my kids, even though when I wrote Nourishing Traditions, there was a lot of eye rolling. Oh, mom's writing a book. But I showed them. The book took off and was very successful, and so I showed them. But the interesting thing to me is I didn't preach to them about this or anything, but they follow the rules, so to speak, and they've had healthy children, easy pregnancies and healthy children. So very, very gratifying. I think as parents, you just set the example. You show them that you cook every day. You don't bring potato chips in the house. You don't let them drink sodas or eat candy bars. And they'll be the same with their own children.
Well, with all your experience on the front line then of food and nutrition, what would you say are some of the best things people can do together or on their own to make that we can make the biggest impact going forward? Because we clearly need to start doing something to try and shift this a bit.
Yeah, well, I would say one of the things we say is follow the 50% rule, which is spend 50% of your food dollar on direct purchases from farmers, artisans. Okay, just 50%, ease into it gradually. And so that would be raw milk and farm foods, farm eggs, farm meat. And you can find these things by contacting your nearest local chapter. Many of them have food groups that do deliveries. My son and his wife just moved to Houston, and they needed raw milk for their baby, and they called the local chapter, and within 10 minutes, they knew where to get it. So we have this wonderful local chapter system. And then I would say 2 things you can do in the home is eat butter, no seed oils. Just use butter, cook in lard, and make your own salad dressing with olive oil. Those 2 very easy things to do to get you started.
And then just a quick one as well, before I let you go. I was just wondering, what's your thoughts on palm oil?
Well, palm oil is a very interesting question. So palm oil is highly saturated. All oils from the tropics, like coconut oil, palm oil, are
Cocoa.
highly saturated because otherwise the leaves would wilt, and they need saturated fat in their leaves. And palm oil is, see, what we get here in the West is refined palm oil, which is used in processed foods. And it's certainly better than the seed oils because it's stable, saturated fat. But in Africa and Indonesia and so forth, palm oil is red. It's really high in carotenes. And I was just having this discussion with a friend of mine who's a nutritionist, and she feels that the people of African descent or Asian descent are better converters of carotenes to vitamin A than Europeans. Europeans can't do that very well. But when you eat palm oil with it's bright orange, and it's got fat in it, which helps you make this conversion. So they are more protected against vitamin A deficiency than we are because they can make these conversions. It's a very interesting subject, and I'd love to study it more. But by the way, it doesn't taste very good. The palm oil tastes kind of dusty.
Oh.
And it's not a taste that we would like. We wouldn't want to use it in cooking. It would kind of override because it's refined. All those carotenes are gone, but the oil is saturated and it's stable, and that's what's good for frying.
Alrighty, well, it's getting late here. It's about 9 something
Had a
p.m.
good discussion.
Thank you so much for your time. It's
Thank you for
been an
having
absolute
me.
pleasure.
And we'll get this out there if you send me the link.
For sure. It's
Yeah.
been kind of fun. I get to meet all my heroes, and yeah, it's just awesome. But thank you so
Very good.
much, and I'll see you when I'm looking at you.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Ciao for now. This podcast is to inspire. I've got loads of interesting